You're here with your hostess, Lauren Smith. And tonight we have the dynamic duo, which I'm sure they'll hate being called that, from Hellbent Holler, Joe and Jessi. I am really excited to have them on. I've heard a ton about them. I've seen a lot of their shows and their work, and they're phenomenal people. They cover the whole spectrum of weird in their area. And so I think that they have a lot of knowledge to drop on us tonight. Shout out to Mike Ann from Tactical Bigfoot Research. He's the one that turned me on to these guys and told me how amazing they were. You guys be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more of these shows, and be sure to hit the like button on this video. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. And I just want to say that the chat is already hopping, so go ahead and join in, drop a comment, and say hello. Tonight we have the Hellbenders, which is what they call their fans, versus the night crawlers. So I say versus, you guys. We all get along in the chat. We're all really nice in the chat. That's the one thing I require of my chat members. But let's see who can ask the best questions tonight, okay? All right. Hi, Joe and Jessi. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hello, Lauren. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. We're under a cold front here. I cannot tell you. It's amazing. It's amazing. I feel like it gets up to like 97 degrees, and I'm like, where's my coat? This is just wonderful.
We'd go for a cold front at this point.
Yeah, I would love a cold front. We've just had nothing but rain after rainstorm after rainstorm, so that's what we're content with.
We have, like, we're all in a drought here. So my mom, I think they went in East Texas. They went, I think it was like 51 days without rain. So her garden is just grass at this point. And so they got rain for the first time the other day and haven't had any more. So we're hoping, all the storms, we hate that people are getting hurricanes and everything, but we're hoping just a little bit of that rain spins up. That would be wonderful. All right.
We're getting tilted right now. You might occasionally hear some thunder or whatnot because it's over top of us right now as we speak.
Yeah.
So
I'm okay with that. If y'all want to open a window and let me live vicariously, that would be great. I'm okay with that.
Get a little moisture.
Yes. Oh, I would love a good rainstorm right now. It's so dry here. My dogs, when they go outside, they get real excited about the neighbor dogs and they run the fence. They are like 2 out of 3 are black dogs, and they come in and they're brown. Like it's just really bad here. It's so dry. Okay, so I just want to let the chat know, mind your manners tonight, because I got my moderators here and they are boot happy. So if y'all are rude, you got to go. That's the deal. Be kind or kindly shut up. That's the only way you get to stay in my chat. I have an amazing chat. My people, seriously, my night crawlers are fantastic. They ask great questions. So I am hoping that they roll out the welcome mat for the Hellbenders coming into the chat tonight. If you have a question for the Duchess of Dark, I haven't used that title in a while, Patrick Vaughn. If you have a question for Joe or Jessi, please type it in all caps, and my moderators will get it to me so that I can ask your question for you. All right. In the meantime, Joe and Jessi research from the Southern Appalachians, in the Southern Appalachian area, all the way from land between the lakes to northern Georgia and all in between. That's quite the spread of not just Bigfoot, but some weird crap. Like, y'all got some weird stuff over there.
Oh yeah. The Appalachian mountain range is one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world. It's not visually as impressive as the Rocky Mountains are now, and that's because they're so old. They've been worn down by erosion over time.
Right.
But since it's such an old and ancient place, there's like such a possibility of weird stuff kind of lurking in these areas. And there's areas in the Appalachian range that people really don't access at all. So there's just a lot of potential for weird and woolly stuff to kind of hide in the woods there.
Right. So I know that you, being from that area, you guys probably, it's 50-50 shot on whether you liked the documentary Hellier. But
that's a great documentary, actually.
Okay, good. So for a lot of us, that was kind of our first introduction to the high strangeness in that area, or in the Appalachians, So for a lot of us, that was like introducing someone to Oklahoma via the movie Twister. I mean, they're just like, this was our intro. So I hadn't realized just how weird it was in that whole general area. And so I actually watched Hellier on my way to Kentucky. And so just, the Kentucky goblins and stuff like that. So I'm on my way there to research Bigfoot. And I have, that going on in my head. And I'm like, great, now I got to worry about all these little things. I was terrified. It's spooky over there, y'all. Y'all got some spooky stuff.
The whole region's spooky, from West Virginia down through, we're in upstate South Carolina, down into North Georgia. And, the whole region's getting, it's kind of getting a population influx right now, but there's still central, those population centers. There's not a lot outside of that. Like Jessi said, some of these mountains, there's just not a lot of people there. And when there's no recreational activities, no hiking trails, waterfalls, people just don't go there. And that's where a lot of these stories kind of seem to be centered at, is these less visited parts of the mountains through here.
And I'm from Western North Carolina. I'm from Haywood County, so it's in the mountains. And people from those regions and those kind of areas grew up with a lot of really strange stories and a lot of strange customs to other people outside. We have what's called granny witches, and it's basically just the old women that are the healers and the spiritual advisors. And it's kind of the use of witchcraft and folk medicine and everything. So it's kind of interesting to kind of come from that background and the superstition and the customs and the folklore that go along with that. It kind of gives you a real paranormal, supernatural kind of base that you live your life off of.
Yeah, absolutely. That resonates because I wasn't raised with witchy mom per se, but my mom was weird. So she was into the paranormal, into, just a lot of very weird stuff. So I was raised weird. I was raised, most kids, if they say, Mommy, I see a ghost, they're like, okay, it's okay. Go back to bed. You're dreaming. My mom was like, all right, I'll bless the house tomorrow and we'll stage it out. It's okay. I was raised weird. And so I kind of had the same foundation, so that when Bigfoot came along, when my mom got interested in Bigfoot, I was like, all right, that's the next thing. Okay, here we go. And so here I am.
It's like you've been training your whole life for this.
Yes, pretty much. I literally, if I think about it, I've spent over half of my life in the Bigfoot and paranormal world, just over here killing it. But I have a friend who's from the Appalachia area, and she is pagan. And I was on my way again to Kentucky to do this expedition. And I hadn't left yet, actually. And she was like, okay. She's like, well, there's going to be a blizzard. She's like, so I don't think you should go. And I was like, it's fine. It's March. It's okay. And she's like, all right, I'm telling you, this is where I grew up. She's like, and I can just tell you, from this, and this, there's going to be a blizzard. Sure enough, the day we get there, there is a blizzard. We're hiking into this primitive area in a blizzard. And I got back and I messaged her and I was like, hey, so you were right. She's like, yeah, I know. She's like, this, she's little mini granny witch. She just knows. And so I was like, okay. I was like, I will trust you from now on. I'm sorry. So anyway, so she used to tell me a lot about her grandmother and kind of where they were from, how they grew up. So it was very interesting to learn about that culture and some of the folklore, some of the traditions, some of the healing methods, and very odd things that are acceptable there with bodily fluids. There was a lot. But anyway, so let's we'll start with Jessi. So you started into the paranormal and occult because you were kind of raised just accepting that, right?
Yeah. Growing up, it was everybody in my family kind of had several encounters with the paranormal. My mother continues to see ghosts on a regular basis to this day. And my mother does, some divination. But everybody in my family has just had some kind of experience, and it's just kind of normal. And communing with spirits has always been a thing that we all did. I started out in more of the paranormal ghost kind of arena, and Joe was more into the physical cryptid side of things. And we kind of put our stuff together, and that's how we ended up so cross spectrum, because he brought me into the world of cryptids and I kind of brought him into the world of paranormal and life after death and ritual magic and everything like that.
Joe, how open to that were you? Were you just kind of resistant at first, like more
not
flesh and blood?
Not at all. Not interested in the slightest or anything. I had a background in anthropology, so I was very familiar with like folklore, comparative religion, stuff like that. But
Okay.
as far as like the like the pop culture aspect, like UFOs, ghosts, none of that stuff really interested me. I was pretty much just focused on like Bigfoot research, and it took actually, even when we got together and started doing this, it took actually just a few experiences for me to become more open to the fact that there's other weird things in the woods other than Sasquatch. And
Right. Yeah.
that's been an evolution that's been taking place over the past several years. And now I'm pretty much open to almost anything at this point, man. I mean, whatever crazy story somebody comes at me at this point, I think my horizons are expanded enough that, I'm willing to at least listen to them. But I didn't start off like that. Over the past few years, it's almost been like playing catch up with some stuff, because we'll have things happen to us when we're out in the woods, doing these like investigations that then I'm going, oh my God, this stuff's real. So now I'm having to, catch up on UFO, like the UFO lore.
I think that was a big one, was the UFO, UAP stuff. I had no interest in that whatsoever.
So.
And so we've really been having to play catch up on that whole phenomenon.
Yeah, that one's a big one. And it's, accepted now. We'll put it that way. It's accepted now because the government said so. But just that was one thing that growing up, I was introduced to the paranormal world, and I had a very healthy respect for it, and was not really, when I got old enough to research Bigfoot on my own, I went the other way away from paranormal, because when you research Bigfoot, it stays in the woods, right? It doesn't follow you home like other things. And then a dear friend of mine, Jonathan Odom, has a quote, and he says, Bigfoot is not the only thing in the woods.
I would agree with that 100%.
Exactly. And so, now when I go out in the woods and I realize, because I'm an empath and I can, as you know, like I feel different things. And so I had to learn to differentiate what I was feeling, whether it was going to be squatchy or whether it was something else there that could be there, especially here in Oklahoma. We're in the land of the Native Americans. There are a lot of spiritual activity here, a lot. And so I had to learn to differentiate. And it took him saying that for me to open my mind a little bit more past Bigfoot being there messing with us to something else maybe messing with us. But I was going to ask, have you guys had a lot of experiences in the woods that weren't just Bigfoot?
Oh yeah. I think we've had more experiences in the woods that are not Bigfoot than Bigfoot at this point. We really, I think we both, when we began doing this, we're like, we both believe there is a Bigfoot. We were out there, and that was kind of our primary objective, was going out there and gathering evidence of the existence of Sasquatch in the woods. But in the process of doing that, we've ended up gathering a ton of evidence of all that other stuff, like you mentioned before, all that other stuff that's in the woods. Right. We have experienced everything from what you would call orbs or portals. I have a video where one just pops up and then I try to run to it. I catch it on thermal, I catch it on video, and there's no explanation for it. That was probably one of the most shocking things that we've ever captured or even seen out in the woods. Just this huge opening of light in the middle of the woods that was giving off heat and just came out of nowhere. So that there's no explanation for it. It was just wild. We've also heard a lot of strange stuff in the woods, strange sounds in the woods. What else would you say?
We caught a thermal image in the land between the lakes that it's something alive, and the physical description matches what people report seeing as far as the beast of LBL. And if you've gone to Kentucky, I'm sure you're familiar with those stories about the upright wolf-like things. And we were making fun of that concept up until that moment that we got that thermal image. And that took a little while to set in for us. But
doesn't it seem like the universe just kind of smacks you down when you make fun of things like that?
Very much. And that's been the biggest thing with me with this whole project, is because I had a sighting of something when I was a kid, when I was in Boy Scouts. And that's what kind of started my whole like obsession with Bigfoot. But I was always open about the fact that I don't know what I saw. I don't know if maybe I was half asleep and I was dreaming it. Maybe it really happened. Maybe somebody was hoaxing me, but I always kind of wanted to learn more about it. but I wasn't really open to anything else, really. You know, I really didn't have an interest in anything else. I mean, I knew like the basic lore, you know, you hear about Roswell, you hear about like the Amityville horror, you know, those things that are really just kind of in the cultural dialogue that everybody knows about, but I really wasn't that interested in any of it. And then, you know, you have these moments doing this where you start to realize how little you really understand about what reality is. And, you know, you mentioned earlier about the UAP dialogue and how that's becoming more socially acceptable for people to talk about it, because now it's getting some legitimacy, you know. Before it was like UFOs were ranked right up there with like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and, you know, stuff like that. It was all equally implausible. Now it's got some legitimacy to it. But as it's gained legitimacy, it also seems like whatever the phenomenon is, it's a lot weirder than what we originally thought. It's not rocket ships coming from another planet and, you know, extraterrestrials getting out. Now we're starting to think that there's maybe an interdimensional, you know, element to it. You know, it was really telling when Jacques Vallée, who's kind of the king of the interdimensional hypothesis with UAPs, he's kind of like on center stage with some of the stuff right now. So that's kind of telling you that the people that, if anybody's in the know, the people that are in the know, that's how they're kind of leaning with it. For me, that was really big, because then I'm going, you know, the stuff in the sky is not what we originally thought it was. So maybe the stuff on the ground, maybe there's more possibilities than what I was willing to kind of consider originally for that. So but this has been a real evolution for me over the past, like, you know, 5-6 years at this point. Just, you know, I've learned now not to dismiss anything out of hand.
I think when you go into any kind of project as big as this has become, and like as this is all encompassing of our lives at this point, this is what we spend all of our time doing. When you go into a project like this, you don't really expect it to be as big as it is and as consuming as it is. But as you do it, you have these preconceived notions about what's out there, what you're going to do, how you're going to approach the subject. And you think it's like being a child, you know, or a teenager. You know everything about everything. You already, I know this, I don't need this. And you're kind of dismissive of a lot of things. But then the more you grow and the more you go out there and the more you experience, you realize you know nothing at all. And you have to expand your perspective, and you have to just finally admit that I don't know anything, and that you don't have the whole picture at all, and you probably will never have the whole picture.
You have, like, I tell people, you know, something that my night crawlers in the chat, they know very well my spiel, but basically, if you go into this with tunnel vision, you're not going to solve this mystery. I mean, just like a detective, if you have tunnel vision, you're not going to, you have your sight set on this is what it is, you're going to miss all the things that it could be. And again, the universe will smack you down if you think you have it figured out. Sure. Orbs. I didn't not necessarily believe in them, but I had never seen one, and I was like, nah, that's that kind of stuff. I don't really want anything to do with that. So the universe was like, okay, cool. Well, here's an orb while you're looking for Bigfoot, and you're going to have Bigfoot activity while seeing an orb, just to really grind your gears up here. And so after my orb experience, I was irrationally angry, because I was like, this is just BS. I didn't want to see that. I'm looking for Bigfoot.
And I had a ghost experience in the Land Between the Lakes on Midsummer's Night that had the exact same effect on me. That I mean, it literally made me angry that
You can see him in the video, because we were filming the whole time. After he has this experience, he sees basically a woman in white would be the best description of what it is. They're a cemetery while we're in the Land Between the Lakes doing a night investigation. On the video, you can see he has a real, just visceral response right there. He gets angry, and that's a natural response when everything is kind of turned on its head for you, and what you thought was real and what you thought was possible is just not anymore.
It was like that when we got the thermal image of what looks like the traditional descriptions of the beast of LBL. It literally, when it was happening, I was just standing there looking at it going, what am I looking at? And it wasn't until we looked at it on a larger screen the next day that I'm going, I can't deny what I'm seeing here. Do you know what I'm saying? We've got still images. It's moving. It's giving off body heat. It's not a coyote. It's not a bear. It's not a deer. It's not a feral hog. It looks like the witness descriptions, you know, the witness sketches of what people are seeing out here. And I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying we were making fun of it up until that moment. I mean, it just, come on, man, an upright wolf walking around, you know, I mean, that just sounds, we always talk about, there's a thing in the paranormal and the UFO community called the boggle threshold. We talk about it all the time. But even people that are open to like weird stuff, everybody's got that threshold in their brain where they'll believe up to that point.
Just what they'll accept.
But anything past that, it just boggles the mind. They're not willing to accept it. And
I absolutely love that phrase. Like,
and that's something that we talk about all the time, because you have to start to realize that. You know, I was completely open to the fact that there were large ape-like creatures roaming the forests that haven't been officially recognized by science. But the idea of like a canine kind of equivalent just seemed crazy to me. You know?
But I think that's a common thread within the Bigfoot community, is that you have a certain level of weirdness that you're willing to accept. You have a lot of people within the Bigfoot community that will really just want to latch on to the belief that it's just an ape out in the woods, and they approach it from that perspective. And that's fine, because I think people who approach it from that perspective are really kind of nuts and bolts about a lot of stuff. So they do a lot of great work, but they're only allowed to accept it up to here, that this is just an undiscovered ape in the woods. But I think that they're just one really weird experience away from coming here, and then all of a sudden, oh God, we're not looking for an ape in the woods anymore.
Well, you come to a moment, because that's what happened to me. You come to a moment where you go, all right, I'm going to be kind of self-delusional to not open myself up to ridicule. You know, I'm going to fool myself that I didn't see this, or I'm going to try to explain it away, or just try to forget about it. Or you can go, listen, I got into this to try to find answers, and maybe this is leading me in a direction I didn't really anticipate going into, but that's where it's leading to me. And if I really want answers, that's where I've got to go to. You mentioned your orb experience. I mean, when we started seeing, you know, they call them like spook lights or ghost lights through here. I was constantly just going, all right, and I'm familiar with all the natural phenomena, piezoelectric effect, you know, swamp gas, which is a running joke on our channel. Everything is swamp gas.
Of course,
I'm familiar with all that. And we would see these lights in the woods, but the camera equipment we had couldn't pick it up. And so the video is just us going, do you see that? And then there's just nothing there. And there's nothing more annoying than that. So we started just experimenting with all sorts of different cameras and stuff like that. I'll pull my Mike Ann moment right now. You know, we got like psionic vision cameras.
This is the camera that we actually captured the Brown Mountain lights on.
So
if we didn't have that camera, we wouldn't have gotten the amazing footage of the Brown Mountain lights that we did. That's our whole thing, is that we like to go tech heavy. That's the only way we're able to get the evidence that we're able to get, is A, being out in the woods as much as we are, and B, having the right equipment to go out there and actually capture this evidence. This is a full spectrum.
We stole this from like the traditional ghost hunters. This is like a full spectrum camera that goes from like the UV up through visible light into infrared. And we basically got it, modified it with like an external battery pack. And we run these in the woods now. And all of a sudden, this has been the best thing to capture, just those little pinprick balls of light that you see floating through the trees now.
That's what I captured that portal on.
We couldn't catch them with like regular night vision, but for this, whatever it is, it's giving off a lot of ultraviolet light apparently. So we're able to pick it up with those. So in a way, and we chase the phenomena with tech sometimes. It feels like it'll happen. We couldn't get it with what we had. So we come back and we're like, all right, could we have used to actually capture that? So that's how our entire gear profile is just built at that point. We do a lot of back and forth with Mike Ann, just going, hey, hypothetically speaking, what would you have used in this? You know, and it's grown from that. We just, our big thing is to try to advance it try to advance the weirder stuff just past campfire stories, you know? Well, this happened. Did you get any photos? No, I didn't, you know? So we just try to go out equipped in a way to try to capture anything that would happen to us in the woods and bring back some evidence of it at this point.
Well, I think it's fantastic. I'm glad that you guys have found some tech that works in your area for sure. And I'm glad that you guys also have a channel to share the things that do work and the things that don't work for your area. And it's amazing to me, the things that work in some areas, but not in others. Where people have success with one thing here, but not, you know, so I would be interested to try that out in this area and see if we can, you know, get anything. You know, I think it's awesome that you guys have expanded your minds. Well, it sounds like Jessi's expanded your mind, as well as, you know, the universe expanding your mind. I have to say with Dogman, it's like Bigfoot, you know, there's not just the one sighting in the Pacific Northwest that makes this a viable cryptid. It's all of the combined witness sightings. And the same thing with the Dogman. You can sit there and say that it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. Well, all these witness statements kind of, make that false. So I have to say that on the topic of Dogman, I believe they can exist, but I don't consent. I don't consent. Like, no, absolutely not. That just is no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But my mother actually had a possible Dogman sighting in East Texas.
Really?
And it was, she said she doesn't like to talk about it. She feels like it's very taboo to talk about it because of the element of the unsettling that went with it. But she had electronic failure right before it happened, weird wildlife activity. So it was, it's one of those things that you have to wonder if that is a paranormal entity rather than a species of Bigfoot.
It definitely seems like there's a huge difference between a Bigfoot sighting and a Dogman sighting.
Yes.
Now, there are some crossovers with some witnesses, but in general, it seems like the Bigfoot sightings are a little more calm. Some are terrifying, but when it comes to Dogman, they're almost always intimidating, terrifying, completely unsettling, unnatural. It leaves you feeling horrified and bewildered. And that's just a common thing.
Did you say that happened to her in Texas?
In East Texas.
Our friend Aaron Dees just wrote that book, Texas Dogman Triangle. And
–
when he got into it, he was just determined. He was just like, listen, if there's anything going on, it's some sort of natural evolution. Coyotes are learning to stand on their hind legs.
Right.
There's something going on here to that degree. And we talked to him all throughout the course of that book that he wrote it. And he went from point A to point B pretty quick, where now he's just basically saying the exact same thing, that there's something to this phenomenon. It's not entirely natural. And it doesn't make sense. When people think it's crazy, the most forward-facing aspects of the phenomenon, if you get on YouTube or whatever, they're pretty sensational, and it's probably the most sensational of all the little, subchapters of the paranormal at this point. It's a lot of wild stuff out there, but once you kind of peel that away, there's people like your mother that have had these sightings that are very uncomfortable about them. There's other weird associated phenomena that go along with them. For us, it started, we started getting reports north of us in North Carolina. It started up in Blowing Rock, North Carolina was the very first report we got. And it was from a Bigfoot researcher who was just like, listen, I'm just going to pass this along to you because it's in your neck of the woods. I don't know what to make of it, but he was related to the witness. And he goes, I've got to think this person's telling me the truth, but I'm just going to throw it your way. And we just kind of went, well, that's weird. It's just north of us. And then just right after that, we just started getting one after the other. Just reports going in a stretch from the north down to the southeast.
And like you mentioned before, the universe has a way of kicking you or kicking you in the right direction.
Right. Yeah.
We always take those hints. If we start getting reports all in a cluster and it's people that don't know each other, have nothing to do with each other, but we just all of a sudden we get rapid fire, all these reports, there's something to that.
But even then we're kind of interested, but we're still pretty much making fun of it the entire time.
Right.
We're trying to think, what is it? Is it just the fact that the topic's getting more popular now? But some of these sightings were 20 years ago that we're hearing about. People have just decided to come forward about. Is it misidentified Sasquatch? What is it? So we decided we were going to start checking out some of the real traditional hot spots for Dogman, and LBL was the first place we went to. And when I say we were making fun of it up until that moment, we were making fun. We were making jokes, making little memes, the whole 9 yards. And then that was just I can remember sitting there. Whenever we do these expeditions, we got a ton of expensive equipment. So if we're staying in a national forest or whatever, we'll have a home base outside where we'll store our excess equipment. So it's not in a vehicle unattended or a tent or whatever. And I was like, we need to go back and look at this on a computer screen. And we're sitting there looking at it, just going, I don't know what that is, And, if I start reaching out to some of the people like Barton Unley, who have researched the LBL for years, just going, can you tell me what in this area, what sort of natural wildlife this could be? And then he just starts shooting witness sketches that he's compiled over the years. The thing we caught had these really big, long pointed ears, these oversized pointed ears. And I'll be honest with you, at the time, it didn't even scream canine to me. I'm thinking, am I looking like a huge bat? Like, what am I looking at here? He started sending me, and he goes, no, that's one of the defining features of this thing in the LBL
It's the
area.
large, upright,
Large,
ears.
oversized, pointed ears at this point. And I'm just going, and so I never say that, hey, we saw a Dogman with a thermal, but I always go,
Right.
we caught something that matches the witness statements of what they saw in the LBL.
Right.
And that was a universe changing moment for both of us at that point.
Of course.
And it just really kind of opened us up. And, a lot of this stuff has been, Jessi mentioned that we're still kind of in disagreement on what we saw that night, whether it was like a portal, a UAP or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was a crazy experience. We were on a hilltop, a thermal imager and a full spectrum camera. We had seen something jump from tree to tree, and we didn't even think it was weird. We just thought maybe it was like a small animal.
Yeah.
We were like, what is this? So we're up on top of this hilltop, just looking all around. We never saw anything. We get ready to go to leave, and we just watch this white light just start to
It just comes into existence.
expand.
Basically.
It's not lighting anything up around it. And it was just, and luckily we were recording when it happened, and you can just hear both of us just going, what the hell is this?
And of course, my inclination is to run straight for it, and he has to
Yeah.
grab and basically drag me away because I wanted to go for it. That's just like my personality. It's kind of a running joke on our channel is that I'm just running straight at whatever this is, and he has to grab me and basically drag me back.
Mhm.
Just because I was like, I have to go to it. I was compelled to go to it. Whether that's just part of my personality coming out on that, or if that thing, whatever it was compelling me to come to it, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it came out of nowhere and it was just there. And we were just lucky enough to have the gear to actually get this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is phenomenal. Like, you guys are, I'm kind of jealous right now a little bit, just a teeny bit. Not about the Dogman sighting so much. I'll let you guys have that. Y'all can
You know what?
keep
And
that.
I feel the exact same way. I've always gone. Our lives would have been a lot easier if we had gotten like a really good like Sasquatch term. Like
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm
I'm
very
like,
open about that.
If we
Yeah.
could just keep it simple and to
Yeah.
Bigfoot, that would be great.
That was not a
Yeah.
that was not a world we were really wanting to enter. And I'll be honest with
Right.
you, that wasn't something we really sought out to be associated with. But
no, but
same
here
token,
it
I'm not
is.
going to deny what happened to us.
Right.
And I'm not going to deny, some of the witnesses we've talked to.
Mhm.
You talk to people and you're going, this person's not lying. This person's not crazy. I mean, it had an obvious visible effect on them. But again, just that taint that came along with it, it's not something we really set out to do, was to be like associated with the Dogman and LBL. So,
Yeah.
But, also in that same
Mhm.
breath, most people don't ask to see Bigfoot and have that dogma
No.
on them. Most people don't ask to see ghosts or portals
Mhm.
or orbs or anything. That's not something that none of us ask for.
Mhm.
I do a presentation that it's kind of Bigfoot Research for Dummies 101. And it basically describes how, admitting to seeing a Bigfoot, yes, there are a lot of liars and a lot of hoaxers. But
Mhm.
if in general, when a civilian comes forward with a real encounter, this changed their life.
Mhm.
This rocked their world. This is not supposed to exist. Bigfoot encounters have ended marriages. They have caused deaths. They have, this is a serious thing that people don't take into account. Like, you guys, I know that you guys were out looking for weird stuff, but Dogman wasn't one of them. So I think it's hard, especially like orbs. Like, I didn't want to see an orb, but there it was. People that do see portals or do see Bigfoot doing some weird otherworldly activity, like, this is not something that I'm sure they wanted to see, but it happened, and they just kind of have to own it. I was asking my mom if hers had ears that she could see her sighting.
Mhm.
She said not that she could see. She saw a snouted Bigfoot is what she
Mhm.
saw.
Gotcha.
But when it was walking, here's the part that freaked me out the most, is when it was walking through the clearing, it walked very upright like Anubis.
Mhm.
She said it walked kind of just like very, straight. So I don't know if that's what you guys witnessed also, or
what we saw.
gonna
We
ask.
were going through the LBL, and if you're familiar with like the lore of the LBL, there's like an attack that supposedly happened in 1982 where a family was killed.
Right.
And that's kind of the defining story for the Land Between the Lakes. When we went there, it was almost just like legend tripping. We were kind of like, cryptid sightseeing at that point. So,
Yeah.
because one of the things we did when we got there is that the thing that kind of shocked us is that area is on like the northernmost portion of the peninsula. There's like stuff around there. There's like a visitor center a couple miles down the road. I mean, it's not the most remote place you've ever been in your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were moving around. Our big thing is we'll usually go into an area, scout it during the daytime, identify some like pretty interesting areas. But nighttime investigations are our big stuff.
Yeah, that's where we excel.
What's what we're kind of geared towards. So we're moving around, and it's like the next night was like midsummer night. So it's the middle of the Kentucky summer. It's like hot as all get out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we had used the LBL as an excuse to buy a new thermal imager,
Of course.
So we had just bought this really nice Pulsar thermal imager. Do your Mike Ann thing. Pull it up.
I'll do my Mike. Yeah,
yes,
so,
please.
We laugh about Mike Ann.
So, I did. Yeah,
we got a new Pulsar thermal imager, and it's kind of an excuse for it. And we had just been at a power line cut, looking at deer through it, taking photos of deer, just kind of messing around with it a little bit, So we're hiking through the woods. It's really quiet, and then all of a sudden we just hear something really large, just kind of busting through the forest at us. Our usual MO whenever that happens is one of us stays focused on it, and then the other one starts checking the back and the sides. So Jessi's looking at whatever this is. We can't make out what it is, and I've got the thermal imager, and I'm just kind of scanning, going from right to left, and I go past this heat blob, and I go back, and what's weird is the woods were so hot that night that this thing was giving off so much heat that it was like, normally it would be much more muted than what it was.
Yeah.
Like if we had seen a deer, it wouldn't have stood out to this degree because the woods were so hot. Everything
using a thermal imager in the summer is a little difficult because the foliage is so thick and then everything is hot.
Yeah, everything's
It's
hot.
a lot easier in the winter because everything is cold, and then anything alive is really going to stand out.
And, A, we didn't go there expecting anything. I just honestly, we didn't. B, we had looked into the Dogman phenomenon, but I'm expecting like a Lon Chaney werewolf or something like that, or just a regular like upright like wolf or dog or something like that. And I look at this thing and I'm like, what am I looking at? And I snap a photo of it, and then it moves a little bit, and I snap another photo, and I'm still not understanding what I'm looking at here. I have my flashlight hanging off a lanyard from my left wrist. So I like kind of put the thermal down, and I'm fumbling for my flashlight, and I look back and it's just gone. And even then I wasn't quite sure what was going on with it. So I told Jessi, I just saw something. We need to move out of this area a little bit. And she's like, what do you think you saw? And I'm like, I don't know what I saw. So we go back and look at these photos. And even then I'm just going, it's alive. It moves. It appears that it has a snout, like a muzzle. It's got these oversized eyes. You can see an eye in one, and it looks like it kind of shifts between the images. We go back the next day and we realize there's like a little gully right there. There's a ditch. So whatever it was upright and leaning against the side of the ditch, kind of watching us.
Right.
I'm like 6'3", so roughly around my height, give or take a couple of inches. Not huge, not like 7 feet tall.
Because we did return the next day, and he got into that gully.
Yeah, and then we just, like I said, we kept looking at it. I just sent it off, and people were going, this matches exactly, at least the top half. You can see an arm. It's weird, but then just the amount of heat that it's given off was just, it seemed unnatural how hot it was compared to the Kentucky woods in the middle of the summer at that point. The deer we had previously seen were more muted as far as like the difference between their body heat and the heat of the surrounding area at that point. And that was it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we didn't have an eye, we didn't have an unaided view of it outside of the technology. I'm building a narrative here with it, but I think that whatever it was watching us and didn't.
Certainly appears so.
A thermal imager doesn't emit anything. It doesn't emit any visible light. It doesn't emit any like infrared light. It's a passive detection device. So I think it wasn't until I started fumbling for my flashlight that maybe it realized that I could see it, and it ducked down in that gully and either took off or it was still down there. So like I said, it was just a very strange moment, and I always tell people we walked away from that experience different than we were when we went into it, and it wasn't anything that we were seeking out. We actually had to eat some crow because we had talked so much crap before we went in.
So if anything, you would rather not admit to all that.
Yeah. And I remember looking at her going, I really don't even want the baggage that's going to come along with this. You had said that nobody really goes looking for a Sasquatch, but within the cryptid community as a whole, that's more socially acceptable to see like a Bigfoot or have a Bigfoot experience than Dogman at this point. And I'm just going, there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes along with this, but if we're going to be honest, we got to say what happened, you know.
Like you said before, I wish it was just, we could just see Bigfoot.
If I had a great Bigfoot sighting, you know, like with thermal, that would have been taking us in a completely different direction.
It's a lot easier, I think.
You know,
to digest.
I have to say, in my experience, the thing watching you and then waiting for you to fumble for your flashlight before taking off is, in my humble opinion, not very squatchy. You know, the Sasquatch that I've experienced, I've put a thermal on something weird, some big giant blob, and something will happen. I move my thermal off and come back and it's gone. You actually moved your thermal over it and came back and it stayed there. That's not usually Bigfoot behavior.
And like I said, it's when I took the first photo, because we were taking pictures of deer at the power line cut. We'd had this thing. Literally, we got it right before we left. We'd ordered it, and we were afraid it wasn't even going to make it in time. And we were already just kind of going, all right, if this shows up while we're gone, who can we get to come by our house and get it off the front porch? Because it's going to be, you know, laying there. We don't want to delay the trip. And it's like I said, it again. I know I'm building a narrative. I always say that. But it seemed to me that it when I stopped and I focused on it, it kind of moved a little bit. And then when I started fumbling with stuff,
the images are completely different. Like you can see a lot of difference. Like whatever this is, everything in the image is the same. The trees are in the same position, but the creature itself moves. So you can see a difference between the two images.
It was to the point where we were I'm going, all right, what else has like a snout and like oversized pointed ears? I'm looking around to see if there's like a kangaroo in the area. You know, it's like a zoo lost a kangaroo. So like a population of kangaroos running around the LBL, and that's what's doing it. I've never been able to debunk that. Never at all. And
Chupacabras moved up a few miles.
So it was a weird experience, and then after that, we just kind of dove into it head first, man. So you know, as far as like the weirder elements of it. So,
okay, I have one question about the thermal, and then I have another question for you guys. So Sue wants to know, on the thermal images, can you make out leg structure or anything? You guys said it was kind of the top half. It was leaning.
Yeah, the top half. And that's what was kind of throwing me off. And it wasn't until we realized. And when we went back, we filmed going back. You can kind of see impressions that
on the side of the like the gully, because
like looked as if something leaning against it.
We filmed this whole process too. We filmed going out there when we were getting the thermal image. I was filming then, and then I have a follow-up episode where we go back the next day to the location, and Joe gets into the gully and leans, and kind of I get where I was standing when we got the image and everything like that, and it's perfect. Like it cuts him off right about here. He's 6'3", so you can see why you got this large, just upper part of a canine figure.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like, I think that's Researcher 101. I feel like it should be Researcher 101, that if you have a sighting, you go right then or go back the next day whenever you can, and you look at the area. I had a kind of sighting the next day. I was out there. I was looking for footprints. I was comparing heights, you know, if you can go back. I know that some sightings are quite traumatic, and that you don't want to go back, and that is okay.
Well, when we got that orb, that footage of that orb, we came right back the next day and took Geiger readings with the Geiger counter.
We came out like outfitted like the Ghostbusters, man. We had we had spectrum analyzers, Geiger counters, tri-field meters, RF meter. We had everything under the sun, and we went to that area and just started trying to get readings, because we'd seen like the traditional orb type stuff, you know, the little lights that kind of chase each other around or kind of follow you, then like dart away. And they're not flashlights, they're not headlamps, they're not fireflies. I don't know what they are, but this one was just completely different. So,
and I got it on the thermal, so it was obviously giving off heat, some level of energy because it's putting off that much heat. So we were wondering if perhaps there would be some sort of residual radiation or some sort of disturbance in the electromagnetic field there. So we wanted to get there and get some real data. And that's like a big thing with what we do as well, is we can get this footage, we can go out here and have these experiences, but we really want to gather data as well. That's why we use a lot of instruments for gathering data and getting real numbers and real readings, and hopefully, you know, get all this down and hopefully find some sort of pattern after
Mhm.
many years of doing this, or maybe seeing if there's something to it. But I think it's really important to do real data collection.
And it's weird because we take a real holistic kind of view to all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we're open to some, and I always encourage people to do that. A lot of like people that are involved in this stuff, if somebody else has a different opinion or takes a different approach, sometimes that's not the most welcome thing. Here, I'm all for it, man. If you want to approach it like it's a monkey running around the woods and you want to take a zoological approach to it, knock yourself out.
Right.
If you want to stack crystals and do all that and sit and play a flute in a clearing, knock yourself out. We don't know what it is. We don't know what approach is going to do it. Maybe one day if the mystery's solved, we all might look at each other and go, none of us guessed right.
What's going to do it? The guy playing the drums.
Drums out the woods.
Oh yeah, the drum. I've seen a lot of those, and I've seen a lot of people's success. I've had people doing success playing flute music. I've heard of people having success using Native American phrases out there. I've seen people have success. I've started adding tobacco. I've started leaving tobacco in one spot that I go to just as a sign of goodwill. I'm like, because this area that I go to, there is a being there that he's cool with me, but other people I've gone with, he don't really like them so much. Yeah. And so I just kind of like leave my little tobacco right there. There's a little piece of moss that I found. I leave it on the fire pit and I leave the tobacco on top. And I'm like, this could be for nothing, but here I am. I'm going to try it.
You never know.
Well, you're in Oklahoma, so you have like a strong Cherokee presence out there.
Exactly, yeah.
And we have the Cherokee. We're all through these areas, the Cherokee and Catawba. So we use a lot of they call it folklore, Cherokee folklore, but just the stories that the Cherokee passed down.
That's usually our starting point when we're doing research on an area. Look at what kind of folklore came out of this particular area. What were people seeing hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago? That's usually our first starting point, because what they were seeing then is so close and akin to what we're seeing now that's the best place to start from.
How do you go about gathering that information? Because I know that here in Oklahoma, especially and in tri-state area, the Native American culture here is you don't talk about it. You don't talk about Bigfoot. You don't talk about spirits. Like, to talk about it is to bring on bad things. And so they don't very often share. So how do you guys go about gathering that information?
There's a book that I go to that's just my go-to for everything. And it's Mooney's Folklore of the Cherokee, and it's got the mystical formulas and folklore of the Cherokee. And it is just a compendium of all of these stories that have been passed down throughout the generations.
I'm writing it down. Okay, good.
Oh, great. And then there's officially people won't talk about it, but there are other people out there, especially as not everybody in the tribe is connected to the past as certain members are. There are people out there that are willing to talk about it because they know the stories, they know they consider it like folklore. They don't feel that taboo that they used to.
Yeah.
So they may not talk about it openly, but we get emails from people all the time going, hey, listen, I'm half Cherokee, I'm 3/4 Cherokee, I'm full-blooded Cherokee, and my family has been experiencing this in this area. One of the places we go to, we take a really weird approach to some of this stuff. Sometimes we will research an area we're going to go into just to death. And then other times we don't research at all and we try to go in blind, so we don't go with any preconceived notions on stuff.
Or actually going looking for anything in particular.
We just take a spot and go in blind just to see what happens. One of the areas we went into, we kept hearing these weird booms that we caught. We actually caught them on camera, and it shook the ground. It was crazy. To me, we always describe it. It's almost like somebody picked up like a full shipping container and lifted it 20 feet in the air and then just dropped it.
Holy moly.
So we caught these on camera, and then we go back and then we find out that the Cherokee used to hear the same thing. They thought that gods would gather on the mountaintop and play like this handball game, stickball game, and that's what you would be hearing. And then when the European settlers got here, they thought it was ghostly cannon fire. They thought that there had to have been a battle fought here, and that you were hearing the cannon, the ghostly cannon fire of the battle past. But the same thing that the Cherokee reported hearing there is still being heard to this day up through there. One of the areas that we go to, we kept finding like what appeared to be like little footprints up through there.
And the Cherokee have a long history and a lot of folklore surrounding Cherokee little people, especially in this particular area.
And people keep telling us, oh, they're juvenile Sasquatch, and I'm going, well, where are the adults at?
Yeah,
it's like a Bigfoot Lost Boys type thing going up here. It's only kids, adults. But I'm going, listen, I understand that makes sense to a lot of people, but at the same token, the Cherokee who were in this area, they were here. They were living a lot closer to nature than what we were.
And they interacted with the little people, and they saw them as little people, not as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. So that goes back to what you said before. Not everything in the woods is Sasquatch. There's a lot of other stuff that people have been seeing for generations out in these.
And especially through the modern day Cherokee that live through here, there are people that we know that have Native American ancestry that think the idea of Sasquatch is ridiculous, but they still believe in the little people. They still, and if you go into certain areas, they don't like to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? It's weird. That's got almost more of a taboo than Sasquatch sightings come through here. That's something that a lot of people take deathly seriously. But
they take it,
crazy, but nowadays, I mean, we've seen the little footprints. We've talked to the witnesses. Something's there. I don't know what it is, but
I have to admit, I haven't admitted this on air yet, but in that same place that I leave tobacco, I also leave a sweet treat in this little rock door thing that I found because I was getting some very odd activity in my tent that I could not explain, and my dogs were being harassed as well. And I had mentioned it to the person I was with, and he jokingly, I say jokingly, he's one of those people that he can say a joke with a straight face and you don't know if he's joking or not. And he said, what if it's little people? And I was like, we don't talk about that. I was like, we don't invite that in my camp. No, we don't. And so I was like, you know what, the hell with it. And I started leaving sweet treats, and now I don't have anything bother me at that camp. And but again, we're in Cherokee land. It's just,
so what happens if you stop appeasing them with gifts?
Exactly. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but it was to the point to where I would have given anything for a good night's sleep at that point. So they can have my donut if they want it, because I just wanted to sleep.
And that's something so interesting, because there's parallels between that and like European folklore. You would leave treats out for the fairies or the brownies or whatever you had at that point, and if not, they would make your milk spoil and kill your cattle and ruin your crops. But you had to give that treat, that kind of like offering, that appeasement to them at that point. So it's these weird cultural similarities that you see, from different sides of the ocean. They're reporting small creatures that you have to appease to stay on their good side at that point.
I have taken quite a few accounts of little people, and these are people that I trust to tell the truth that otherwise would never admit this to another soul. And they have had this experience, and they know that they weren't hallucinating. They weren't tired. These have happened to them. And there's several people in my close circle. And so it's kind of one of those things. Again, I do not consent, but if leaving a piece of bread will keep me safe, I will do that. That's fine. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
You got to pick your battles on that.
You do. Absolutely. So on that note, Jessi specifically, I'm gonna be very frank. When you go out in the woods, are there any safety measures you take aside from your physical, tactical outfitting that you do? Are there internal spiritual type of safeties that you take?
Yes. So aside from my Glock 29, yes, there are other safeties that I do. I've actually, as kind of a combination of all of this, I've actually gone through and done a ritual and blessed our handguns that we take out there and the knives that we take out there. But you have to protect yourself spiritually, because I think these things are, while they are a part of our physical world, we can see them, we can seem to interact with them, they leave trace behind. I think that they're also part of the spiritual world. I think that they kind of go and skim that line between the physical and the spiritual. And that's something that we just barely have a grasp on. So I think it's very important to protect yourself spiritually before you go out into the woods. You have to do grounding exercises. You do those regularly. But just you have to take some sort of measures to have spiritual protection. And then a lot of times we have to sage the house when we come home because we have things that kind of, it seems like they follow us back to the house. We had an incident for a while where we would have shadow figures in the house after we were going to this certain area over and over again. And I had to kind of do a ritual and cleanse the house before we were able to kind of relax because we were both seeing shadow figures constantly in the house. So there's that risk of that paranormal hitchhiker coming home with you.
It wasn't even just us. I know you've been on Kyle with Encrypted Connection show.
Yeah, I love Kyle. He's so great.
I was video chatting with him one night because we build these long duration recorders. I mean, I know you can buy them for like $750, but we take like digital recorders and hook them up to an external power source and put them in a waterproof box. And he wanted to like make one. So I'm video chatting with him one night, kind of taking him through our setup. And then afterwards, we're just sitting there talking. And he all of a sudden goes, and I'm like, what's wrong, man? And he goes, is there somebody in there with you? And I'm like, no. And he goes, do you have a mannequin in there? And I'm like, no. And I spin around and he's like, swear to God, dude, I saw there was a black figure behind you, just plain as day. He goes, I thought it was Jessi, but he goes, it was larger, it was masculine, it wasn't moving. And then he goes, so that's just weird that somebody's standing behind Joe like that. I'm going, all right, stay with me while I check the house out, So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even he saw it at that point.
And then we also sometimes we'll take holy water, black salt out into the woods with us. But it seems like when we carry stuff like that, a lot of the activity just does not exist at all.
Yeah.
Joe forgot some holy water in his bag, and we were going out there, and nothing was happening. We're like, God, we've really had a dry spell for a few
everything
weeks.
Just stopped. So.
And then we realized he had holy water in his bag. We're like, okay, we need to probably take this out. And then it seems like the activity came back with a vengeance.
And that's hard. That's weird for me to reconcile because I try to take. I always tell people I try to approach irrational topics in a pretty rational manner.
Right.
And I'm doing that and I'm going, and then we took holy water out again and then nothing would happen. We would have a peaceful walk through the woods.
Yeah.
We would leave it.
And that was the creepiest night ever. It was
that was
so
the creepiest
foggy,
night ever. Yeah. So.
And it was like one of the creepiest nights we've ever been in the woods and just nothing.
I mean, we couldn't even use white flashlights. We had to use red flashlights because the white flashlights were blinding us off the fog. Yeah. You couldn't see 5 feet ahead of you, but we had that holy water with us and it was just
insanely peaceful.
And I keep going. This is not like psychosomatic. I'm not convincing myself that it's peaceful. Nothing happened for like we were out there for like 12 hours, man. We were out there almost until the sun came up and nothing happened. And then we leave it at home and we have a much greater chance of something happening.
And I've also noticed with us doing this work that we go out and it's just us two when we go out in the woods. It's just Joe and I. And we seem like we have a lot of stuff happen. But if Joe goes out by himself,
nothing at all.
Nothing at all. Like, I don't know if it's because there's something about me that draws it in. Like I'm a weird little beacon. I'm a weird little antenna for the weird. But when we go out together, things will happen. If I'm present, things will seem to kind of happen out in the woods. But he's gone out by himself before. I'll be at work because I work nights. He'll go out by himself and he's just like, well, this is boring.
Yeah, nothing happens at all, literally. And people have asked me, do you think it's because she's a woman? Because there's that trope that, a lot of this phenomena is more attracted to women. Or is it her? One, I've got a sample size of one. I don't know. She's the only woman I've ever gone out into in the woods and done this for. Of course, I don't know. But I mean, it literally, I've gone into areas that we've had stuff happen and just gone and sat there in the dark. Nothing. I don't feel anything strange. I don't hear anything strange. I don't see anything strange. And that's nothing's ever happened to me solo like that before since I was a kid and had that sighting. But doing this, nothing at all.
Can I ask, Joe, this is kind of personal, but can I ask, when you're with Jessi in the woods, do you feel like you're more at ease with her there? Or do you feel like you're on alert and more protective? Or do you just feel like you're more chill when she's there?
No, more protective when I'm there because part of that is too because of her tendency just to run towards stuff. So I end up
you're with the blue-haired Chihuahua right there. She's gonna go bite the Bigfoot.
People are like, "Why do you guys call this like Hellbent Holler?" And I'm going, "Well, when we did this, we were living in a holler. We were living out, in a rural area." And I said, "She's got Hellbent tattooed across her knuckles, and that pretty much describes her to a T." When we saw that light that night, I'm a foot taller than her, so I had a different perspective. And it makes a crazy story sound even crazier, but we're looking at this light that's self-contained. It's not illuminating anything around it. It's growing. It's giving off heat. And it looked like there were figures moving around the base of it. And it wasn't lighting the figures up, but you could kind of see them as they passed in front of it. And I'm staring at it going, all right, are there insects flying between me and this? And it's blocking the light out a little bit. So I'm trying to tell her, I think I see, I'm on camera saying it. I'm going, I think there's people there. I think there's people around this. And she's just like, I'm going to go to it. And I'm like, no, you're not going to go to it because we don't know what this is, you know? I mean, and then the light starts to kind of lift up and I don't know where those figures are. And we're in a strange patch of the woods. You know, we're a ways from the vehicle and she's wanting to run towards it. And I'm going, no, you're not running towards it.
Yeah, we were just basically on the edge of getting in a real fight in the woods.
We're arguing the whole way out. We're arguing the whole way out because I still have the camera running, but I'm not filming. I'm just kind of like, we're leaving down out with it. And you can just hear us arguing the entire time I get out. I'm going, there were figures around it. I'm telling you, there are figures around it. You needed to let me go to it. So not our finest moment, but there it is.
And also, if something happens to me out there, Joe's going to starve to death. So
yeah, I'm dead. I'm a dead man. So.
He's got to keep me alive. You know?
I asked because I know that there's one person that I go out in the woods with, and he carries a very large gun, which I carry too when I go out. But his demeanor is very nervous. He's on alert, and I think that they can sense that if they show themselves, they're going to get shot. And so sometimes they tend to be aggressive. But I know that when I go out with Ryan, he's 6'7", so he's part Squatch at this point. But he's a gentle giant. And so when I go out with Ryan, he's this big, intimidating, tattooed dude, but he sits there in that chair and we get activity all night long. We don't get the threatening vibes. We don't get territorial activity. It's just like they don't see him. That obviously they could see him as a threat easily, but they see him and they're like, you know, they just get that vibe that he's not going to shoot them. He's not going to do anything stupid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, energy always matches energy with anything that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's why I was asking is, you know, I know that, you know, when you have your partner there, whether they be female or male, when you have your partner there, you're a little bit more at ease. And so that's why I was asking is, whenever you're alone, are you on high alert?
Not me, man. I'm constantly having to go, where'd Jessi go to? So, you know, get back here, slow down. So yeah, that's pretty much
it's kind of a running joke on our channel that they're like, you need a leash for that girl. Cause like I will. But I see something, I'm gone, and I got to stop doing that. I know.
I hear about it like every time we release a video. If that guy would just shut up, she'd have it figured out by now. Like I'm the brick that's like holding her back at this point. But
well, I mean, at the worst, you will find her body, but she will have DNA in her little fingers. Okay, you will solve that mystery.
Put it on there or something like that. So.
In your claw, and she will have the memory card shoved somewhere, and you will find it.
There was one video we were doing. We were like scared to death. It was crazy. Something was going on, and we're like, well, what if Joe was like, well, what if something happens? I said, I hope they find the SD card.
And I'm just like, are you kidding right now? I mean, is that just like some weird like gallows humor, or are you being serious right now?
No, I tell people that all the time. I'm like, you might not find all of me, but if you find my hand, there will be DNA. Okay, like I will go out. There will be hair. There will be skin. There will be blood. There may be an eyeball. Like a toe. I'm going out. That Bigfoot's gonna get some scratches. Okay, like I'm a fighter. We're gonna rip hair. But anyway, that's why I was asking, because I just know that, like you said, energy matches energy, and I know that. But I've heard, of course, accounts where, you know, kind of the more macho men are going out with their big guns and they see one and it scares the crap out of them. So I mean, that's not always true, but
are you familiar with Barton Nunley?
Yeah.
Okay, so we went out with Barton Nunley in the Land Between the Lakes, and we went out with him a couple of times out there. Barton is a madman.
He's insane. He's absolutely insane.
And he goes out there and he's got this spear, and he goes out there with this attitude, and he will go out there and he'll be like, "Come for me!" and like screams at the sky. And
he's hardcore, man.
And it seems like we don't get a lot of activity when he comes at it like that.
And I'm like, Barton, whatever's out here is terrified of you. I'm terrified of you.
Yeah, because we'll be out there and he's just got the spear held to the sky, and you
Yeah.
cowards, come for me.
Yeah.
And it's like nothing happens. And I'm like, that's because it's scared of you, Barton, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is that energy, magic energy kind of thing. It's like, and of course that's more like a Dogman thing, but it's like you kind of have to go into it kind of under the radar a little bit, and
Yeah.
even like when we carry, but we always carry in our chest rigs. We don't open and carry ever. We always carry in our chest rigs. We try to move through pretty calmly and even keel, and kind of move through the woods in a slow, kind of normal kind of pace, and try to be as comfortable as possible when we're in the woods and not overly aggressive or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I kind of try to tell people is, you know, they always say that women have more interaction and attention from these creatures. And I'm like, well, we go in there when I'm not every man, but a lot of men, when they walk into the woods, they walk in, I own this place. Like, I'm the biggest thing here. I own this place. And I'm like, you have to walk into the woods with respect. You know, this is their house. And I'm not saying you have to kowtow to them, but you do need to walk in there with a healthy level of respect. And like women, we walk in there and we could be carrying. I carry just about everywhere I go in the woods. But whenever you go in, you know, you're looking around, you're looking for evidence, and you're kind of, you know, you don't have that I'm the big man in the house attitude.
Well, I mean, I've walked down many dark alleys at night. It's the same thing. You know, you don't know what's there. And you know, as a chick by herself in the middle of the night, I lived in New Orleans for a very long time, and I used to you know, in the middle of the night, I'd be walking from where I work down to Decatur Street, you know, in the French Quarter by myself. So I've walked down many a dark alley in the middle of the night in very dangerous areas. And you have to have a certain level of respect and confidence and awareness, like full awareness of your surroundings, your situation, and of the possibility of what could happen. And I think that helps me be a better investigator. That helps me be a better researcher, because I can walk through these woods and know that my death could be lurking in those woods. So I have a healthy respect for that.
You guys say that now, but you watch Barton's going to call me one night and go, I got one. I got it speared, man. It's laying on my living room floor right now. He'll be the one to crack it. So.
Well, I know that good luck to him. Good luck to him. Yeah, there, you know, that's why I carry. I don't carry for Bigfoot. I carry for hogs, large cats, and meth heads. I'll be completely honest. We have a very healthy population of people in the woods who aren't in their right mind and want to do you harm. And so that's why I carry.
I see somebody in your chat, JM, said, I think you'll get more activity if you go in at night. I don't think anyone is going in the LBL at night. We've been going in the LBL at night for years. So it's all over our channel. We go in at night. We really operate a lot at night.
Yeah, I know quite a few groups that have gone in at night and camped out there at night. You know, it's but it is still a very scary place. All right, let me grab some questions real quick because I don't want to lose those. Okay, that was one of the questions I haven't got to yet. So I'm going to piggyback off of this question, but Lori, my mom, wants to know, do you think the quartz has anything to do with the high paranormal activity in the areas that you research?
I think there is a correlation. I don't know what it is, but there has to be some kind of correlation, because the areas that we go into where we have intense activity, we are finding large deposits of quartz. We just got back from the Uwharrie. We had never been to the Uwharrie before, and we were kind of experiencing some weird stuff in areas where there's lots of quartz, and there's like whole veins of quartz through there. The Uwharrie was actually an area where the first gold rush in America happened, and where you find quartz, you find gold, so they kind of go hand in hand there. So we know there's large quartz deposits underneath the Uwharrie. In North Georgia, we find these huge chunks of white quartz. And so it's these areas where we have all of this activity. It seems like it's always around where we are finding these insane just deposits of quartz. I don't know if it's a conduit for energy, if it's a magnet for energy, or what it is, but there's definitely a correlation there.
That's interesting. That makes, I mean, I think people should add that to their list of things to look for, you know, because whenever you go into any area, or you're going into any area, you should see if it's an area that supports Bigfoot. If it's a
Also, iron is a big thing. Like LBL, there were large deposits of hematite at the LBL, and there was a booming iron industry in the 1800s. And they would mine it, and they would, refine it. They had all these big furnaces in the LBL, so they took a lot of that iron out of the land. They refined it out of the land. So now, iron is used to protect against the supernatural. You can use iron to protect against, evil witches and fairies and things like that. So iron is often used as a protective measure. But what they've done over the years, or what they did in the 1800s, is they took all that iron out of the earth and they shipped it down the Cumberland River. That was a huge industry. So now they've removed that mineral, the element that was actually a protective force on that. And I have this working pet theory that might be why, or part of why, the LBL is so active and so just full of all this weird activity, is that thing that was protecting the land has been removed from it.
We got a guy had contacted us that lived in the area down there and said that he'd worked a barge that worked the rivers around the LBL, and that they had been seeing these tall, upright, like black figures on the shore when the barge was going down at night, and that people were going, all their bears. And he's like, there's not a lot of bears down here. They think occasionally a bear might kind of go across the water and get into the LBL, but there's not a breeding population down there. And he goes, I saw them. They're not bears. I don't know what they are. So we went into that area kind of scouting around, and we found these old, like, abandoned TVA buildings down there that were just, one of them had like a total Evil Dead vibe, and just walking and all these bones everywhere. We're finding bovine bones, coyote bones, deer bones, just all of these bones. We go, all right, we're going to come back here and kind of investigate tonight. We went in there and we had the craziest equipment drain that you've like ever seen. We had, these are really big battery backups on this. We were down to our second one in this. Our flashlights died, our headlamps died. We got out with like a pen light and then that camera. And we went back the next day and we found these huge chunks of slag, the slag that's like a byproduct of where they took the iron out. So whatever that area was before the TVA put the buildings there, they did a lot of iron mining because you don't really find a lot of slag in the LBL. People take it as souvenirs. And the few areas you go into that there's still some left, there's signs up saying, don't take the slag.
The slag in the LBL is blue. It's blue slag. And you can find just tiny pieces around some of there's two furnaces that are still kind of intact, the western furnace, and then there's one in the central part of the peninsula. But it's blue. It's really pretty blue, just chunks. And that's the byproduct of the iron processing. Take the iron out of the hematite, and then you got the blue. That's what's left over. We found just a huge field of it. It's like insane. It's like, obviously nobody's ever found it before. We were also there in the wintertime, so the lakes were down lower, but I just went, this is extremely interesting. Obviously the iron's been pulled out of here. We had, and when I say battery drain, I mean, I had to throw away most of the rechargeable batteries that we had that night. They just never held a charge. And again, maybe it's not a coincidence. At that point, it was no longer a coincidence. I can't fool myself and say it was a coincidence, but we're back trying to charge it, and I'm going, all right, another set that just doesn't work anymore. And I'm really obsessive about the equipment. We change out rechargeable batteries long before their shelf life is, anywhere near. And looking at that going, she's got this pet theory, and I'm going, that kind of ties in here. I mean, obviously there was iron mining, and obviously there's something going on that just knocked everything electrical that we had just out that night. So
I think that's a great theory. I think, keep exploring that. And I cannot wait to hear, because I know that you being you, Jessi, you're going to find the evidence to support that theory, more evidence to support that theory. So I honestly can't wait to hear about that. That's something, I'm not in that area. I've heard a lot of experiences there and stuff. I've been to the area last year. I was so stoked because I was there for work actually. And my kids and I was like, I'm going to LBL, like on my way back from Kentucky. And so I went to the museum there at Land Between the Lakes, and I went to the museum. I saw all of like how it was made and all of that. So having that little bit of knowledge, I can see where you're going with that. And I think you're onto something. That's definitely interesting. Okay, hold on. I have that question. I had a question about the Mammoth Cave systems. and I can't find it. But how do you guys feel about that being a conduit for paranormal activity?
So Kentucky Kentucky is just rife with cave systems that have never been explored, and that's all a part of that cave system. You've got that really strange incident that occurred a couple of years ago where that guy kind of went crazy and fired off his pistol in the cave, and there's a lot of conflicting stories about what happened with that. He said that he saw a Sasquatch and then tried to fire upon it. Then there was a big smear campaign against this guy, but the Freedom of Information Act thing that our friend went through to get some info on that was pretty weird.
We can't share.
We can't share about that.
But, it's weird. Again, looking at it like how I look at it, I'm just going, all right, that's one of a couple of things. It's either something subterranean that's like using the cave systems to like live in and travel and come out of, or to her point, it's a conduit for some sort of weird energy. If you look at a lot of Dogman reports, what's one of the common themes with Dogman reports? It's some sort of either disturbance or void in the ground. There's either caving, mining, something like that going on in these areas where there's like Dogman reports.
Kentucky also is the only state that I know of that has such a variety of just specifically werewolf-esque creatures, like the Waddy werewolf. You got Bearilla, the Gateway werewolf, and the Beast of the LBL. This is all Kentucky, and that what is under Kentucky is the Mammoth Cave system. So what you're looking at is there a possibility of subterranean upright canids that are?
We were with Barton. Barton Nunley's like we very close contact with him a lot of times. And he made just he made a random comment there one time. He like looked down and he goes, "Man, if this ground was like transparent, we'd be shocked at what's living underneath our feet." And I'm going, "Good Lord, you're probably right, man." I go back and forth on that, but you can't deny the fact that you mentioned Hellier earlier, the original guy that contacted them with the little white beings on his property. He talked about that there was like, I can't remember if it was like a cave or an old mine shaft.
It was an old mine shaft
on his property that he thought was associated with this. So. We get reports from stuff sometimes, especially through Kentucky and Western Tennessee, where they talk about how there's old caves on like family property and things come out of caves.
Now you've also got, you think about the Corey Godsey case. He was a young boy who was dragged up the side of a mountain and into an old mine shaft. That was in Kentucky.
They said feral dogs.
They said it was feral dogs, but there's a lot of evidence that points toward it not being feral dogs, that it was something else. And there's a lot of weird stuff going on with the Fish and Wildlife up there too, the Fish and Wildlife Commission.
Yeah. They know more than they're ever going to share with us. Actually, we were at the Alabama campout last year, and we had a retired game warden that came and told about some possible Bigfoot activity, and it shocked the peas out of me. I'm like, has anyone checked this man's credentials? Are you sure he's a game warden? Because they're not generally allowed to tell about that. So if this is one of those times when I wish I was clairvoyant and I can just like,
exactly.
I know that's cheating, but listen, it's for science. It's for science. Well, thank you for sharing that about the Mammoth Cave systems. Cause that's like, as soon as I contacted you guys to have you on and you agreed, I was like, that's my question. Got questions. Okay. Robert Den Duvin wants to know any paranormal activity around Cowpens National Battlefield.
So we have not investigated around there. However, I do have a friend that has family property near there, and he invited us to come check out his family property. We haven't gotten around to it yet, but there was an incident. They had cattle out there, and a lot of the calves were getting mutilated and taken, and they were reporting a large feline, like not quite a mountain lion. It looked different than a mountain lion. And they refer to that in that area as a wampus cat. And they even put out traps and captured something, but it chewed its way out of a steel cage.
And when we say chewed its way out of it didn't chew its leg off, it mangled the steel up. And he was convinced, he was almost convinced that somebody was poaching and running animals, and that they had caught like one of the poacher's dogs, and then the poacher had used tools to get the dog out. And then other people started to report that they were seeing this big black cat thing in the area. And then he saw it, and he's just going, I think it chewed its way. It somehow got its way out of it. They were using coyote traps. Old coyote traps is what they were using for it. And so, yeah, we haven't, but that's like on our bucket list to go do.
And his property is adjacent to the Cowpens battlefield.
Good luck with that. That one you might actually want a leash for her. I know you guys have cats, but there's no kitty here. Okay, I just need y'all. I need y'all to keep making good educational content for all of us that don't live where you live. And if you get eaten, I can't learn about all these amazing things I'm learning about tonight. So
we made that same comment last week, and somebody just went, we'll just watch reruns. It's fine.
Yeah, oh, that's terrible. But I mean, if she gets DNA, I will feature her in memorial on my channel forevermore. Okay, so Rare Robert wants to know, what are your thoughts on Dogman being man-made?
You want me to take this one since I recently did some?
Yeah.
The Dogman subject, more than almost any other like paranormal or cryptid subject, it's pretty sensational. And when there's a certain amount of like LARPing and kind of creepypasta that goes with it, because it's a pretty sexy topic. Werewolves, basically. I mean, you're basically talking about werewolves.
Yeah.
When we go into these like areas in like Kentucky and Western North Carolina and all that, people don't refer to them as Dogman. They usually go, I saw a werewolf, because that's their cultural point of reference for it.
Right.
If you're not in the cryptid community, you've probably never heard the word Dogman. It's getting a little bit more well known now, but most people will just go, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I saw a werewolf. The Dogman topic's almost like Bigfoot on steroids. It's people have seen it acting like a natural animal, eating roadkill, doing stuff like that. Even those sightings seem to have a tinge of almost like supernatural threat to it, but they do see them acting like regular natural like creatures, animals, like eating, doing whatever. Others, they just seem like you said, that Anubis thing, where it's just, there's nothing natural about it. It's paranormal from the start to finish. You keep hearing these stories that they're like genetically, engineered super soldiers and everything like that. I'm going, well, these sightings have been going back since before that technology was readily available, if it's available right now, so that doesn't quite explain it at that point. But then one of the things I always think about is that, again, I can't overstate it. The whole UAP thing, the way it's developed over the past few years, has really kind of changed our way of thinking a lot about it. That it turns out, like I said before, UAPs are a lot weirder than maybe what we originally thought. I think a lot of this other stuff's maybe weirder than what we were originally thinking about it. And, part of the discussion right now is that the government might be in possession of like recovered technology that they're trying to reverse engineer for its own gain. And I'm going, well, if they would do that with like mechanical stuff, with technology, wouldn't they do that with biological stuff as well? Maybe I can't rule out the possibility that they got a hold of something and maybe they have tried to use it for their own gain at that point. I mean, it sounds crazy. I don't think that if it is happening, it's not happening a lot, but I can't say that that idea is as crazy as it was a few years ago to me at this point.
I do have an interesting little tidbit about that too. Project Stargate, which was a remote viewing project that the CIA had. There was somebody that was involved with Project Stargate that remote viewed basically Dogman, it was werewolves, but said that they were some kind of super soldier. Like people, you hear these stories that and they have some sort of bio armor, that their hide is kind of like a bio armor, and that they are basically they're subterranean and they're an army that is waiting for something. And I was like, this is like horrifying. But yeah, that was just one of those Stargate things. I thought that was a pretty interesting little tidbit.
I don't think that's responsible for the majority of encounters or sightings, but I can't rule out that something like that's maybe not going on out there.
Yeah. How do we feel about Dogmen skinwalkers in reference to Dogmen? Like,
I don't think they're the same thing. I think you're talking about two different things when it comes to skinwalkers and Dogman. I think Dogman is its own kind of thing. Skinwalker, I think that's more of a that's a Native American. That's like a Navajo
shapeshifters, basically. Yeah, so.
And whether it be like a shapeshifter from the get-go, or whether it be someone who used bad medicine and then is punished for that by becoming this, or they did this to themselves. There's a lot of different kind of takes on it, but I think you're looking at two different things completely.
I just wanted to clear that up.
I think there's different stuff that goes under those umbrellas. Like I think that there's maybe more than one type of phenomena that we're lumping under the Dogman thing, you know?
Yeah, just because maybe there's similar physical characteristics to it.
I feel the same way. I wanted to clear that up because there's a lot of people that are like, oh, it's a human, it's a shapeshifter. And I'm like, they're thinking Rougarou or Loup-Garou. They're not really thinking the Native American type of shapeshifter. And, you know, it's not just the Navajo that have the skinwalkers. That is across many Native American cultures. We have actually, so the Girl Scout murders here in the Tulsa area, it's a very famous murder that we covered on Planet Fear. And the first half of the first episode is about the actual murders. And the second half is actually about the more paranormal aspect that it could have been a skinwalker that committed this atrocity, and how they use the Native American, I'll say law enforcement in that area to find them. So I will say the Skinwalker and Dogman are kind of the top of my list of I don't like it. I don't consent, even if it does exist. It is far more complicated, I agree, than the Dogman thing, for sure. Okay, Alan Lassiter, he had a question, and I did want to ask you guys, because you said that you went, you know, that you guys kind of cover even accidentally all cryptids, really, or other cryptids. Have you done any research on the lizard man of South Carolina yet?
No, not yet. That's actually probably about 3-4 hours south of us. Okay. That's in, oh God, where is that? That's Scape Swamp. Yeah. Lyle Blackburn wrote a book about that. We have not been down there. We've looked into the story. There's a lot of conflicting information about that story, about whether it was a hoax or not a hoax. And we, you know, we're going to look into that. We're definitely not going to look into that in the middle of the dang summertime.
I feel that.
But yeah, we're gonna, that's on our list. It's not high priority, but that's on our list of things to look into, because it's South Carolina's flagship
cryptid, and it's weird because, like I mentioned earlier, we're knife people, you know, like Mike Ann is, and I was selling a knife on Facebook to a guy who was in South Carolina, and posted it on like a knife group. He got in contact with me, and there's always like a little bit of like, hey, let me check your profile out to make sure you're not a scammer, you know,
every time.
And so he looks at my thing and he goes, oh, you guys are like into Bigfoot. I'm going, yeah, you know, we do like research in like, you know, this area and all that. And he goes, have you ever heard of the lizard man of Skateboard Swamp? Because he lived in that area. And I'm like, yeah, of course I've heard of it. We've never looked into it. And he goes, don't waste your time. It's fake. My uncles were involved in the, you know, the hoaxing of it, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, really? And he goes, yeah, it's just a big hoax. Don't waste your time on it, you know. So, you know, we did the deal. I sent him the knife, and we kind of kept talking. And finally, he was just like, I'll be honest with you. My uncles saw it, but they weren't involved in the hoax. We tell people that because we don't want the area to be overran with like just goofy monster hunters, basically, at this point, you know. And he goes, according to my uncles, it's real. And I'm going, so why did you tell me that? And he goes, we don't want people running around here. And it's weird because over the last few years,
you just blew up his spot.
Exactly. Well, it's kind of changed. Nobody really wanted to talk about it, but now they're doing a festival. I think it's the second year.
There's a restaurant down there. There's like a lizard man diner.
But there was a real undercurrent of a lot of the locals just trying to downplay that because they didn't want people down there just running around, basically. Yeah. So I'm never quite sure which story was right on that.
Right.
Was he telling me the truth to begin with, and then he was just blowing smoke, you know, the second time?
Did he try to sell you a lizard man call or anything after that?
A t-shirt at least? Did you get a t-shirt out of that exchange?
Yeah.
That's great. We have our little areas in Oklahoma. We actually have the Hanobi Bigfoot Conference and Festival here. So I just found out like a month or two ago. I was driving with Ryan back from Houston. crossed over the border into Oklahoma. We stopped at a rest stop, and they have a Bigfoot figure right there. It's this big, giant, like 10-foot tall Bigfoot figure, and it tells about how weird things are in the woods in Oklahoma. And I'm like, what is this? What, like, oh, this is a thing now? Like, Oklahoma, the state of the Bigfoot? Like, what we used to have an octopus. That wasn't true. So now you're going with Bigfoot. Good call.
And we're always interested in how that Jessi's like big into the whole tulpa idea, that some of the stuff might have just thought and attention, mental energy might strengthen some of it. We know down south of us in North Georgia, they opened up that Expedition Bigfoot Museum, a few years ago.
Cherry Log, Georgia.
Yeah, Cherry Log, Georgia. And after that museum came out open, Bigfoot sightings through that area like skyrocketed almost overnight.
Yeah.
And I'm always just like, well, is it because it's everybody's mind and they're just seeing Bigfoot everywhere? Or is it the fact that there's just so much more like mental energy put out there? If there's something to her like little tulpa theory that she has that might have an effect on it at this point.
Or just people feel comfortable coming forward with their experiences too. I think it could be a little bit of both even. That's something that I tell in that presentation is that like, back in when I started this, Finding Bigfoot hadn't come out yet. You didn't talk about Bigfoot around the water cooler. You didn't let your coworkers know that you were a Bigfoot researcher. You didn't do any of that. I was a weird person, and they knew I was weird, but I didn't go into Bigfoot, right? After Finding Bigfoot came out, it became a lot less taboo to talk about. The dogma surrounding it kind of went away. You were able to mention Bigfoot, and I call it the 6 degrees of Bigfoot. If you go in any group and mention Bigfoot, someone will undoubtedly, well, my cousin's boyfriend had a sighting and they had an experience, and someone invariably will always speak up. And I think that people do not feel comfortable coming forward with their experiences until you give them a channel to do so, or give them, your channel, for example, my channel, other podcasts, when they hear people giving their experiences and they're like, this is okay. And they may come forward. There's still a lot of people out there that deny what they saw, will not come forward. It's a psychological minefield. It's that too.
Do you know what minefield? Alcohol. I ran a bar when we met in the French Quarter in New Orleans. I ran a bar, and I'd been involved in Bigfoot research before I moved there. I never really had much luck, but I was still interested in the topic. And invariably people would just go, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, very dismissive of it. And then you get a few beers in them, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, well, there was this one time, I don't really like to talk about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I was out camping and, went to the tree line to relieve myself. And, there's this 8-foot tall shadow with red eyes, like a few feet from me, I don't know what that was, but they have to break down those barriers to be able to talk about it for fear of ridicule.
Absolutely. I had a soldier actually tell me his experience of the giants of Kandahar. And he was there. He was very drunk when he finally, and what broke him down to tell us is the person I was hanging out with had a 22-inch Bigfoot track. And he was like in his shop, and the person had gone into a shop and he saw it. He said, what is that? And he was like, oh, that's a Bigfoot track that we casted. And the guy, he got very quiet, and then he broke down, and I watched this man have a full PTSD breakdown. And it took hours. He wouldn't let us do, like, I couldn't, every time I would go to leave because I felt uncomfortable, like I was making him uncomfortable by being there, he would be like, no, have her come back. And he would sit there, and then he would share a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And at that time, I hadn't heard of that. I didn't know what that was. And so when I went and Googled it and like started doing my research on it, he knew things that weren't part of what I could Google and research. He knew things that he knew a lot of what was involved, but he also had different things that weren't out there for public knowledge. But it was the same thing. He had been drinking quite a bit. He saw that footprint, and
it all came back, like flooding back and just coming out.
And then he berated my research partner and he berated us for being so irresponsible that we would go out in the woods looking for something like this. And I mean, he was very protective. He was, but he was berating us. He's like, I can't believe you guys just do that. And I will say that experience with him, hearing his witness encounter, it made me have a lot more respect, because at that time I had been doing this for 20 years. And so whenever I hear someone go, I have a Bigfoot encounter, I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. And I wasn't really affording them the respect that they deserved, because this can be a life-changing event, like you guys have said. Yeah. All right. Sorry, what?
I said it changes your perspective a bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was just kind of, it does make you think, you know, there are giants out there that, I do need to show a little bit more respect in the woods as well, which is what I started doing after that. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to ask you guys, so what are your goals for your research right now? Like, what is your specific goals for the next however long?
I don't think we had, when we started out, we didn't really have a plan. We really just went headlong into it, and we didn't have a plan or anything in mind at where we wanted to take it. We've kind of just let it develop on its own, organically. And we've been doing the channel for over 4 years now, and actively doing it for over 4 years now. And whatever happens with it. And we didn't even plan on doing our live streams. We're coming up on a year of us doing our live streams every Monday. We do those at 7:30 p.m. every Monday on our channel. We kind of just did that on a whim about a year ago, and now we do it every Monday. So we really didn't want to do that or anything like that, but it just kind of, we love doing it now. We love the interaction we have with our viewers, the Hellbenders. We've really built a really amazing community of people that I call a lot of these people my friends at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think just letting it kind of develop on its own and go in whatever direction it goes into. We're going to keep getting more equipment, because we like Joe said earlier, we chase the phenomenon with tech a lot of the time, and we'll get all this equipment, and then something will happen and we'll be like, crap, we really need this now. So we just go and we get another piece of equipment and start using that and start gathering data in a different way and coming up with new ideas that are a little out of the box compared to how people have been doing research over the past few years. Because it seems like the way a lot of people have been doing research has not really moved the needle a lot. So we really want to take a different approach to it and constantly be innovating and constantly be thinking outside the box and trying new experiments and approaching it from a different kind of way. And I think that's where we excel. And we just want to keep doing that and see where it takes us and see where it goes.
Short term, mine is, I've got a real deep interest in infrasound. And for me, I don't think I have a long-term goal with this at this point, just because so far off from where I started off. I think I've gotten to the point now where I realize that our thought process is going to be probably very different a year from now, because it constantly evolves and grows at that point. But our short-term thing is that we're really big into the infrasound thing. We actually had some infrasound detection equipment built for us specifically. I don't think infrasound is what's causing that zapping effect that people report. I think that people have latched onto that. So for me, I think now I focus on more short-term goals. Like, all right, I want to explore this aspect of the phenomenon, get a better understanding of it, and then move on to the next thing. So
compartmentalize a little more. For
me, one of the big things is that everybody kind of trots infrasound out without really understanding it. It's kind of one of those tropes that everybody really talks about. So I spend a lot of time on that nowadays, getting the equipment works, looking for huge amounts of infrasound where it's not supposed to exist out in the woods, which I haven't yet, but that's my short-term thing, at least, as far as doing that. And then I think once I get a good grasp on that, then I'll identify the next little area that we'll move into at that point.
Infrasound is the one aspect of Bigfoot research that I'm most interested in, because I do experience that, or whatever we think infrasound is, every single time I go to the woods, and I have for 20 years now. So I would be very interested to hear about your research.
Take a tri-field meter with you, or an EMF detector. So I don't know if you do that right now or not, because I know that's usually just the domain of ghost hunters and all of that.
Right. But I've taken an EMF meter out there, but I haven't in a long time. So that would definitely be. Yeah.
It's when you look at it, the way infrasound works, and I always leave myself open that if something is out there using infrasound like this and causing these effects, it's using infrasound in a way that doesn't exist in like either the animal kingdom or, it's not a man-made technology. It's something that's being completely novel, which in a way it's almost more mysterious than anything else. But that was one of the things that I did, is that we were getting we get weird EMF spikes. We get weird stuff on the spectrum analyzer in some of these areas. Jessi's had that zapped effect a couple of times now, so much so that I had to carry her across a creek one time so she didn't, take a header into it. But I'm not picking up infrasound anywhere for it. And so that's one of the things that I've kind of like latched onto, just because it's our thing is like, what can we do that nobody else is doing at this point? Like, we don't even really cast footprints. I mean, there's enough people out there casting footprints. There's enough cast footprints. That's not going to move the needle any more than it already has.
Yeah. Everybody talks about infrasound all the time. So we've got this piece of equipment built so that we can actually test for it instead of constantly talking about it, actually start testing and getting that data.
And it's funny because I tracked down this little scientific instrument company in like Virginia. It's like a 2-person operation. They work out of like a little warehouse, or they might even work out of a storage shed, as far as I know. I don't know. But they build like small batches of real specialized equipment. And they made infrasound detection equipment, and it was used for amateur astronomers to detect when like meteorites enter the atmosphere, or people that were testing infrasound around wind turbine farms. And then they were making them for people that were doing like elephant research in Africa.
Right.
But it's like bulky. You've got to have it plugged into a laptop, but they were the only people that I could find that made this equipment. So like I'm messaging back and forth with this guy going, I need what you have, but I need it to be like smaller and more ruggedized. And I like the fact that it hooks up to a computer, but I need it to run off an external power source. If I don't hook it up to the laptop, we're going back and forth. And the guy's finally like, what do you need it for? And I'm just like, screw it. I'm like, Bigfoot research, man. Guy didn't even bat an eye. You know what I'm saying? He was just like, oh, okay, I can do that, And it's funny because then I noticed later on, because I went to check something on his website, he had added that into the list of possible uses for it. And I'm going, smart guy. So he's like, a marketing opportunity here. It's an untapped market for it. But we got one with the way we got it's funny. So now we've got it and we're trying to use it in a novel way. So we're trying to figure out like what's natural as far as this stuff goes. So that's our short-term goal with this right now.
That's phenomenal. I cannot wait to hear what kind of results you get with that. I know Shane Carpenter, I just had him on recently, and I had told him, because he said he's working on the same thing with infrasound, but he's in a band, he plays guitar, he's using his musical audio equipment to he mentioned something that I can't think of right now because I'm on air, but he used some piece of equipment to basically read the decibel levels of infrasound and isolate that. But you have to have a recorder, obviously, to catch that. He said if we could isolate when it's happening, we can record it, we can analyze it. And I said, that's phenomenal. I said, you have a human barometer right here. I was like, let's go. Like, I will tell you when I'm feeling it. So I would love to see, like, in the perfect world, I would love to do a collaboration of all of us. And I'd be like, hey, Jessi, you feeling that? It's going on right now. And Joe's like, I'm reading it right now. And Shane's like, I got it on recording. This is what it is. I've isolated it. Here it goes, but
see, that's awesome, because you need really most of the like commercially available like equipment, recorders or like speakers or whatnot, they're made to work within the human range of hearing, because it's humans that are using it, right? So it's going from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, and you've got to have really specialized microphones, which are expensive as all get out. What we've got is, I actually had it out just in case, but it's basically to get overly technical, it's a leaky microbarograph. It basically detects sound pressure levels under 20 hertz. It goes from 20 hertz down to 0.005 hertz, so almost next to nothing. Perfect. And it basically detects those sound pressure levels. And then it gives me a readout of the decibel levels. You would think that if something's using infrasound, elephants can get up to about, like 140 decibels below 20 hertz. And you don't hear of zookeepers suffering from these effects of infrasound. So if something's using infrasound out in the woods, it's got to be a lot more powerful.
Right.
So that's my thing is that if I start seeing stuff out there that's orders of magnitude more powerful than what an elephant can do, then I'll be convinced something's using infrasound.
Right.
I haven't seen that yet. So
Yeah.
if you look at the physical effects that infrasound causes, it doesn't match up well with what people report. But what does match up, and this is weird, I know, but if you're exposed to a very strong EMF field, then you start getting those zapped kind of effects.
Okay.
And that also can drain equipment and cause electrical malfunctions and everything like that. That doesn't jive well with a monkey running around the woods. So I'm a little confused about what's going on there, but that's what the data's telling me at this point. So
I think that's interesting. It would definitely be interesting, like you both do, to measure both and see which one it actually is causing the issue. Because again, like I said, I've been experiencing this for 20 years. So I would love to know personally. I will say that I have experienced where it's targeted. It's a targeted shot of energy at someone. So it could be, they could be blasting Jessi with it and you step in front of her and she doesn't feel it anymore.
But that's not how sound waves
travel.
You're right.
You're
right. That's like me speak, like the three of us in the room, and I speak, and only you hear me, and she doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's weird because what's funny about all this is that it's harder and harder to get good information on this because there's such a political battle over infrasound because it's all tied into like wind turbines and green energy. So there's people that are like anti-wind turbine because they don't want to win it near their house. And then there's other people that are, so there's almost like two conflicting groups of scientists. One saying that infrasound causes these effects and the other one saying, it doesn't really cause anything at all. But one of the things they do agree upon is that it's very hard to direct.
It just goes out.
Yeah.
It's a low frequency wave, so it goes and it travels far distances and it just goes out. And
we've had that same thing happen before where Jessi was affected by something and I'm just a few feet away and it didn't affect me.
Right.
So that whatever that is it's got to be extremely focused in order to do that. Because I'm talking about maybe just 5-6 feet away and I don't feel a thing. And she's just out of it at that point. So.
I've had my mom actually, she tested it. She was being blasted or zapped or whatever. And she moved behind a large male and it stopped and he didn't feel anything. And so it was like it almost cut off. And so whether that's a psychic attack, whether that is EMF, I think that's definitely worth pursuing. And I cannot wait to hear what kind of information you guys get on that.
We've been using Jessi as like a guinea pig almost. We got a lightning detector that we've hooked that she wears when she's out now. And that detects lightning strikes basically and gives you the distance and the frequency and all of that. Well, what we're I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but if she does become under the influence or get affected by this, whatever, it's gonna be interesting to see if we pick up anything.
A release of energy.
Detector. Yeah,
absolutely.
On the lightning detector she's wearing like over her chest at this point. So that's one of the things that we're kind of experimenting with right now.
Right.
Just to see what sort of results we get with it. So.
Well, I already thought you two were amazing and that your methods are definitely, you're going to get somewhere with, y'all are getting somewhere with your methods, but I think that you two have amazing research methods and the way that you go about it. You're very open-minded, like you said, and you nothing's really out of the realm of possibility, which I think is the best way to do this. But I just became your biggest fans with your infrasound research. So I cannot wait to see how successful you guys are with that, because I want answers about Bigfoot, of course, but I specifically want answers about this. Okay, it's been a long time that I've been having the same thing. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys go tend to your kitties, and I thank you so much for, I know that they are meowing to be fed, because you don't ever feed them according to the cats.
No,
I know.
When you see the bottom of the bowl just a tiny bit,
starvation is imminent at that point. So
yes. But thank you guys so much for coming on. You guys have been phenomenal. I hope to have you back soon after you guys go and test out these things. I would love to have you back on and do another collaboration. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys. And so I just want to shout out real quick. You guys can find them on Instagram at Hellbent Jessi, on their website at hellbentholler.com, or on their YouTube channel /Hellbent Holler. So you guys go like and subscribe, heart all their things, and drop some comments. Let them know how awesome they are. Support them in any way that you can, whether it be liking and subscribing, sharing, donating, whatever. they have set up for that, because I really think that these two have a pretty healthy research method, and I think they're gonna solve this. It's in the bag. So
We got
you guys
this, don't
don't
worry
worry
about
about
it.
it. Yeah. Yeah. Even if it takes Jessi, you know, succumbing to,
It's the price we're gonna have to pay. So
yeah, you know, it's fine. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you. It
us.
was an absolute ball. So.
Absolutely. All right. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being on here. Thank you to the Hellbenders and Nightcrawlers in the chat. You guys have been phenomenal tonight. Thank you for showing so much love for Jessi and Joe. I think these two are just great. Like they're very knowledgeable. Obviously, they're very chill. They don't have that judgy closed-mindedness that is going to hold up this topic from being solved. So I applaud them for having an open mind and being so damn cool about it. So you guys go follow them, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that like and follow on this channel as well. Show some love in the comments. Let me know who you want to see on the show. Stay safe.